Welcome to the ZimmCast, a program dedicated to bringing you what's new in agricultural marketing. The ZimmCast is the official podcast of AgWired and hosted by Chuck and Cindy Zimmerman.
Hello and welcome to the ZimmCast. I'm Chuck Zimmerman. Although Cindy and I got a little break from the agriblogging highway, things got busy again. In this episode, I'm going to share a few interviews that have a focus on a new farm bill. What do you think? Is it still possible this year, or is it going to be sometimes in 2025? You'll hear different thoughts from Ted McKinney. He's with the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. Sonny Perdue, University of Georgia Chancellor. Representative Austin Scott of Georgia, and Representative Frank Lucas from Oklahoma. They were interviews that we conducted during the Southern Peanut Growers Conference as well as the Tech Hub Live Conference. So let's get started, and I'm going to do that with a couple of interviews from the Southern Peanut Growers Conference, and that's Congressman Lucas and Congressman Scott. At the Southern Peanut Growers Conference, I'm visiting with Congressman Frank Lucas. And Congressman, first of all, tell me just a little bit about, what's the priorities, especially with the Farm Bill. We got different proposals. What's going on right now?
Well, first off, it is time for another Farm Bill. We are in the sixth year of a 5-year Farm Bill, and Farm Bills are the basic safety net that make sure we raise the food and fiber we need and that our fellow citizens have access to that food and fiber. So it's critically important. This has been a complicated Farm Bill process in this 2-year term of Congress, partially because we as Republicans are barely in control in the House, anywhere from 4 seats to 1 on any given day. The Democrats are barely in control in the Senate by 1 or 2 votes. So, and it's a presidential election cycle, and that makes things crazier. So no one has complete control, and everyone has to work together. My Democrat friends always, of course, especially in D.C., have a super focus on the feeding programs. Republicans tend to be focused on the programs that raise the food and fiber, conservation, rural development, all those issues. So if we have money, where does it go? I think the reference prices, the safety net to produce food needs to be addressed, because that hadn't changed in 10 years, those numbers. On the other side of the equation, while we guarantee that the social nutrition programs will rise at a level that will keep them hold harmless under inflation, my Democrat friends back east want to dramatically, maybe 20 or 30% increase the spending on that, and there's not enough money for both. And as I always tell my people back home when they ask about this, it doesn't matter how many dollars you put on those EBT benefit cards. If there's nothing to buy at the store, it's for naught.
How about when it comes to things like biofuels, ethanol, biodiesel?
Well, I'm from an oil and gas state. I'm from a big animal feeding state, so it's always a little bit of a touchy subject. But biofuels are here. Ethanol, biodiesel, that's been around now for so long. The markets, production, decisions have been made based on where we are. Besides, if you didn't use ethanol to oxygenate the gasoline to make it burn a little cleaner, what would you do with that 35 or 40% of the corn crop right now that goes through ethanol? Now, I know folks say, well, animal feed would be cheaper, but corn is the basic feed grain price that underpins all other prices. If you bust the corn market, you're going to take down barley and oats and wheat and everything else, and we don't need that right now.
From the political standpoint, with what we had happen with Donald Trump and the attempted assassination, how do you think that has maybe impacted the election as we move forward?
I think it's been a sobering moment for all publicly elected officials. A half an inch, one way or the other, a slight turn of the head, and we would have had a graphic tragedy in front of all Americans and the rest of the world. So thank goodness the Lord was on Donald Trump's side at that moment in western Pennsylvania. But by and large, before the attempted assassination, President Biden's performance at the first debate kind of cut his knees out from under him politically. He's not been able to overcome that, and the drumbeat among Democrats back east for a change only gets louder. I don't know how they do that. This will be unique in American history, But I would say that perhaps as he has been now for many months, President Trump's in the driver's seat in this election cycle.
What kind of message do you want to tell these peanut growers that are here at the conference?
That they are important, they make a difference in their communities, the economic impact, they make a difference in the nutritional issues in the United States and around the world. They need to stay engaged, whether it's encouraging investment in research and infrastructure to drive peanut production forward to greater, more efficient heights, or the political side of the equation, where I need them to help me educate members from their home states and across the country about why farming in general, peanuts in particular, matter. So few people that I serve in Congress have any direct connection to production agriculture anymore, except at the dinner plate. And we have in this society a tendency to take the things that work for granted. American ag works amazingly well, and therefore the average citizen takes it to an incredible degree as it's always going to be there. No, this is a miracle. This is not carved in stone.
Well, thank you very much, Congressman Lucas, for visiting with me here and for you to be here at our Southern Peanut Growers Conference to give us a little talk. So thank you very much. And reporting from Savannah, Georgia, I'm Chuck Zimmerman reporting. Here is a portion of my interview with Austin Scott. Can you make a comment about Farm Bill and what this kind of thing could impact on when we might actually get one?
Yeah, well, right now we're operating under an extension, as you know. I think it's likely that an extension will pass before the end of the year. A Farm Bill has come out of the House Ag Committee that takes care of production agriculture. And the thing that people that are watching this need to know is that the production ag spending is only about 10% of total Farm Bill spending. Better than 80% of it is now going to some type of SNAP or some type of food benefit. And so as you've watched the majority of the Democratic Party, not all, but the majority of them, they've been out there wanting to take more than the 80+%. And it just, if you do what they insist on doing, it leaves absolutely nothing for crop insurance and ARC and PLC and the other risk mitigation tools that our farmers need to actually grow the food that we all depend on. I mean, we're used to in America walking into a gas station or a grocery store and being able to buy some groceries. Well, those groceries come from the farm. And so we have to take care of production agriculture. It's been a very tough couple of years for our farmers. It's very, very tough right now if cotton is a big source of revenue for you. And Secretary Vilsack is up there testifying before the committee that farmers have had the best 3 years ever and that they're flush with cash, and it's just not true. And so we need a president that will give us a Secretary of Agriculture that will take care of production agriculture, and we don't have that right now. And so I absolutely support President Trump, and I'm sure if we get him in there, we're going to have a Secretary of Ag that's going to do a good job for production agriculture.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Following them will be Sonny Perdue, University of Georgia Chancellor, and Ted McKinney. Chancellor Perdue, I'd like to first ask you a question. If things go the way the Republicans want this year, would you be willing to be USDA again?
Look, I thoroughly enjoyed my tour of 4 years at USDA. It was a great opportunity to meet farmers and ranchers all over this country and see the heartbeat of America from that perspective. But I flippantly tell people right now, if the occasion occurred and the opportunity occurred, I'd rather be married.
So along the political lines, how about something that affects everybody and the system you now manage, and that's the Farm Bill? Just what do you think we're at and what's going to happen?
Well, the Farm Bill is so important, not only to growers and producers, but to the world at large. We know most of the money obviously goes to support the SNAP program or the food stamp program, and so it's important to continue that way. It's sad, honestly, that we can't come together as Congress to work out those issues. The Farm Bill has typically been, in years past, one of the most bipartisan bills that have ever come across the desk, and to think that we cannot even do that now is not a good testament to the environment that we're operating in. So farmers, producers, people, anyone who eats needs to understand that we've got a reliable Farm Bill to go on, and we just not keep kicking the can down the road. Give us direct opportunities about where we focus on in that way, and hopefully I assume nothing will happen until after November, but let's get that be job number one for agriculture after that.
What were some of the comments that you got in your kind of impromptu listening?
Hey, not to give a speech, but to listen to really the people on the ground who are consumers of our policies, both political policies, but also our educational policies. As Chancellor, I have some degree of influence over our colleges and where they focus, and I really just ask the question, how are we doing in that way? And I think from our research perspective, many times some of your members felt like that there was too much emphasis on money raising through grants, not necessarily research to serve the industry in that regard. So those are the things we're looking at. Obviously, there's got to be a balance. You've got to have funding to fund research, and you got to have grants to do that. But then the product of that research ought to be going into the field to help our productivity of not only peanuts but all other crops and feeding the world.
All right. Thank you very much, Chancellor Perdue.
I'm speaking with Ted McKinney, who is the CEO of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, and he was the keynote speaker here at Tech Hub Live. A great address, Ted. It was wonderful. You gave a lot of energy here in the room. One of your main messages was about climate change and how we can address climate change and do climate-smart agriculture and still increase productivity. Why are you so optimistic about that?
Well, I have been witness on our own farm and in my industry days to the advancement of innovation across the board. As I say it lovingly, the crops and the critters and everything in between. So I've seen it. And based on what I have been hearing and then what I saw at this conference in the types of companies here and what they're doing, it's mind-blowing. So I'm juiced because I see it has not stopped. In fact, I'd say innovation is accelerating. What's lost, though, are the messages where people understandably are very concerned about climate change and all the things that go with that, soil health, air, all those things. Fine, we must address that. No disagreement here, and I would guess most of ag would not disagree. They would agree. What I'm concerned about is I'm not hearing anybody say it's both. And sometimes wealthy societies have that happen to them. We can all afford our food, but what about the countries of Africa, Central South America, Asia Pacific, where they rely on our feed grains? Quality, yes. Lower cost, yes, because we're so efficient. What are we going to do? Say goodbye? Say so long? Say, sorry, climate change just took over? No, we can't do that, particularly when we don't have to. That's the point. I've seen developments over decades on our own farm, and I see the excitement of the people at this conference, and they all are bringing something new. We can do it both and not miss a beat.
Well, talking about climate-smart agricultural practices, and you also were asked about the 45Z tax credit, which was part of this was all part of the Inflation Reduction Act, getting into sustainable aviation fuel and the climate-smart agriculture practices, which we're going to need in order to qualify those biofuels for sustainable aviation fuel. Also, the idea of carbon capture pipelines. There seems to be a lot of elements in here that are going to, that these biofuels producers are depending on to make happen. Yes. So your comments on that?
Yes. Well, Cindy, I'll hearken back to when ethanol, corn-based or sugarcane-based ethanol, came alive. It was a Herculean effort. Lobbying, call it influencing, call it education, whatever you want to call it. All of ag came out very active in that, and I think we've got to do the same. Though it seems obvious to you and me, the benefits, whether it's addressing food waste by putting it into sustainable aviation fuel or renewable biodiesel or whatever the name might carry, my gosh, agriculture and the processors downstream are doing a great job. But let's just be honest. The oil and gas lobby is very alive, very well, and very strong. And everybody is getting in the ear of Secretary Yellen at Treasury, the president's ear and his advisors, and it's tough to call the balls and the strikes when you're in that situation. But I think logic, need, care for the environment, care for farmers who need that help now. I'm glad we're on this side, not the other. I'll put it that way.
You mentioned Bill Northey. I was so happy to hear you mention him and pay a little tribute to him because he was here at this event. One of the greatest people I know in the administration with you. Just a few words about that man.
Well, this is hard. Bill and I were colleagues. He was Secretary of Ag when I was both a company employee, and then I became Director of Ag and his counterpart of sorts in Indiana. At USDA, our offices were right across the hall from each other. His suite of offices doing NRCS and Farm Service, and mine, the other side, doing trade, were right across. And our wives, to this day, are still very, very, very good friends. What I said about Bill to a lot of friends was the following. I never met a more empathetic listener, a caring listener than Bill Northey. Oh, my gosh. You couldn't go complain to the guy because he was so into what you were saying and what he wanted to hear what you had to say. And it was real. It wasn't fake. So we lost a titan when we lost Bill. And I'm guessing God needed some soil conservation or something going on up somewhere else because he's got a good one. But, yeah, he was a dear friend to me and certainly for most of his years to all the people of Iowa and then to the world when he was when we were together at USDA. But I loved the man, and I hated to see him go. It was a blow to so many. But we're not going to let him. We're not going to let his legacy go, and that's what I keep telling people.
Good. Well, trade. That was your thing at USDA. It seems the last few years we have not done a whole lot on trade in this administration. What are your views on that? Do you think we've let ag trade go in the last few years?
Well, without pointing fingers, we have. I thought it was said very well when the trade rep herself was at a hearing and said, well, here's the dilemma. Farmers and ag loves trade, and lots of manufacturing don't like trade. I think it was more unions don't like trade, but and that's a true statement. So here she is caught in the middle. You know, I wish she had an ag background so we could see some good, honest bias, but I'm kidding on that. I would have liked to seen us at least make the effort to trade, do more trade in ag, and if we're going to fight battles on chips and cars and widgets and anything else that's non-ag, fine. But let ag do its thing. We're now a net food importer. I never thought I'd see the day. Now, I can rationalize that. Some of that's because we buy high-priced wines and spirits out of Europe, and that skews it. Come on, give me a break. For the first time, we are net importers. And at a time when we've got to diversify our portfolio, I mean, there are risks with countries like China, for example. I'd love to see us trade a lot more with China. And I think we could. But when that is in question, you diversify your portfolio. And when you do that, you've got to have a good level playing field. And when so many countries are either cheating the WTO or are not signed on to the WTO, and then when their tariffs are not one, but oftentimes 4, 5, 6 times higher than they're doing a deal with Australia or good friendly competitor of ours, we're screwed, man. So I hope that there is a renewed effort to look at that. I think ag could do a better job at describing how ag does benefit workers, whether it's unionized or not. I mean, think of the people in the rail, in the shipping, in the stevedore or port business or anything else who benefit. A lot of those are unionized, and they're benefiting from ag. So maybe we've got to find that better story to tell. I don't mean to be Pollyannish with that. I suspect it's way more than that. But, gosh, that could be a starting point. But, no, we've got to get serious about ag trade.
Well, you mentioned briefly USMCA, which was really one of the big accomplishments of the Trump administration. How do you think that's gone since then?
Well, overall, very well. I mean, it is the model that we, the U.S., and I would say, if they're wise, other countries would use. It's the only free trade agreement that's got biotech provisions in it, for goodness sake. It's the trading between what I still call, and this is I've stolen this from Secretary Sonny Perdue, we're in the best neighborhood on the earth. So we better figure out how to get along given how much we each benefit. But when our friends in Canada play sleight of hand, and they did with dairy, they might accuse us of something, and that's fair game. We've got to deal with those. I'm not trying to say we're holier than thou. When our friends in Mexico bring up this unconscionable corn decree, now I get the philosophy behind it, but you can't continue to celebrate teosinte and plant teosinte, the first ever of the maize variety. There's no yield there. It's more like a grass. So let's save them. Let's keep that germplasm alive. That's what the CIMMYT facility, the UN-based CIMMYT facility that Norman Borlaug work at, that's what they do. And let's celebrate that, and let's have festivals celebrating teosinte. Man, I am all in. I'm ready to put some money into that. But don't just say, oh, because our culture celebrates that, we can't bring on new technologies. My God, man, you'll starve. So those are what's testing the system, and there is an appeals system in the USMCA, and let's just hope they work. Let's hope they work. They must work.
Well, it seems like it's having less problems than NAFTA did. So
yes, and I think when you sit them down, each country realizes, my gosh, we are so intertwined. We are so intertwined that we can't screw up a good thing. But politics will play, and politics are real, and votes are real. And it's more so when you've got very, very divided consumers and a very, very divided Congress. So strap yourself in is what I can say, but we better keep focusing on the science and the realities of that science.
One more thing. There was a hearing last week on the Hill about the state of the farm economy, and it was very, very kind of depressing. What do you see when you talk to your state ag directors? What are they telling you? What do you think the state of the ag economy is right now?
Yeah. Well, it pains me. I don't like to hear that. I always want to be hearing that farmers are doing well and making profit. But reality, when we look ourselves in the mirror, is that cycles have been with us for eons. We're going through a down cycle. Not using that as an excuse, not using that as a reason not to do anything. I'm just saying cycles occur. So when you anticipate a cycle, or you're in a cycle, for crying out loud, that's when you're more timely with a farm bill, disaster assistance, trade, for crying out loud. That's when you've got to be on your A game in all the other areas to soften that blow, because cycles are going to happen. Can't stop that. But we're at a time when we're not on our A game. Maybe in some areas, but not in all of them. And you've got to be on your A game at all times. I mean, the Olympics is you can be the best of the best in competing with athletes. Let's take swimming in the U.S. When you go up against other countries, it's a new day. And you got to get off that platform right. Your breathing's got to be right. Your diet's got to be right. Well, same goes for farming and ranching and all the processing downstream, and we're not on our A game yet. We can get there, though, and that's what this conference is so valuable in doing, is it's giving us the tools to make those decisions, minimize risk, and make a good decision. But even then, we've got to get more certainty into agriculture.
But overall, you're optimistic.
I am still an optimist, and I always will be.
Very good. Great to see you here. I know we could talk forever, but it was such a pleasure to see you. And here at Tech Hub Live in Des Moines, I'm Cindy Zimmerman.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the political realm here as we get towards the November election. So now I'd like to give a little preview about this year's Agricultural Media Summit. It's taking place August 3rd through the 6th, And this is the 25th AMS. It's going to be held in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures. You can keep your eye out for them throughout the event, and feel free to download and share them. So let's look at what's going on for this year's conference. Starting on Saturday, the August 3rd, there's the Photographers Workshop. It's kind of an all-day thing where people can take pictures, get some advice, and just interact with each other as they go through where are we? We're going to be in Historic City Market, Museum, just different places. And so that's one of the things that's taking place on Saturday. And then a Kansas Ag Tour will also be taking place at several different farms and then conclude later in the evening. So that's basically Saturday. Then on Sunday, the morning is pretty much the board meetings of ACN, Ag Communicators Network, and LPC, Livestock Publication Council. And, of course, the PIF board and the ACT students have their own session, and that's going to take place throughout most of the morning into lunchtime. And then in the evening, we're going to have fabulous welcome party, and this one is themed as Roaring Welcome Party to celebrate 25 years of Ag Media Summit. So then, guess how we're going to be dressing up? I'm going to do my best. We'll see what happens. Then moving over to Monday, we start out with speed networking, breakfast, and welcome, and then we get into sessions. And there's lots of different educational sessions. Some of the early ones talk about tools that make our jobs simpler, or maybe can, and think artificial intelligence when we get to that. And then we've got photo and video sessions. There's a session on career professionals panel, and just lots of different ones that take place throughout the day and the following last day as well. At the end of the day on Monday, the ACT group will be going to a Kansas City Royals Agriculture Night game. And dinner is on our own. I think we can find some good places to eat in Kansas City. So on Tuesday, let's see, what do we got here? I'm looking at this on the schedule, by the way. So we start out, this is the day of our meetings and awards, the business meetings of the organizations, and awards. We are doing this is going to be a little different this year. Usually it's an evening, big extravaganza, but this is going to be awards at breakfast for ACN, LPC, ACT, and then we have our major awards at the lunch, which will be sponsored by Syngenta. I should mention we have lots of sponsors and hope that you check that out and support them however you can. But then the afternoon we go back into educational sessions. That's going to take place throughout the afternoon. Also throughout the day, we're going to have the Info Expo on display with companies that have booths, and that's going to go out throughout the day, actually. Then it'll be closed at the end of the day. But that's not the end, because there's going to be a special closing dinner and fun at a place called No Other Pub. Yep, that's the name of it, No Other Pub. And that'll be our closing where we can all get together and have some good fun before everybody goes back home the next day. So that's it. That's basically a summary of Ag Media Summit for 2024. And that's the ZimmCast for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the ZimmCast, the official podcast of AgWired. Check us out at www.agwired.com to find out what's new in agricultural marketing.